Hey man, Dr. Greg here, and you are watching the 38th episode of the Beatitudes podcast, where we're talking today about the very first practice in the rite of reaching out, which is serving generously at home. Now, the rite of reaching out, and I set this up in the last podcast. If you haven't checked out episode 37, you can learn more there. But the third rite of the liturgy of domestic church life is the rite of reaching out. And this is, just to recap briefly, the way that we live out our royal mission of baptism. We reign with Christ by serving with Christ. And so the rite of reaching out is the part of the liturgy of domestic church life, which enables families, common families, to become dynamic domestic churches. It is the part of the liturgy of domestic church life that helps us learn how to practice service as Christian disciples. And the family is the best place to learn that. You know, we have a tendency to think that service is just something we do for other people at times we can schedule it in. But service is part of who we are as Christian persons. And so learning to have an ethos of service as opposed to just an ethic of service is important to live that at home. And I explained the difference between those two in the last podcast. So the first practice in the rite of reaching out is families serving each other generously at home. And dads, you play an important role in making this happen. You know, we have a tendency to love our comfort zones more than we love each other. And I've talked about this before in this Beatitudes series. This is kind of the number one problem that affects marriage and family life. Every single one of us loves our own comfort zones more than we love each other. So when our wife or our kids asks us to do something, our first reaction isn't, assuming that's not immoral or demeaning in some way, how can I help? Our first reaction is, regardless of whether that's immoral or demeaning, how do I feel about it? And if I don't feel like doing it, then I'm going to say no, because I just prefer not to. And when we do that, again, assuming the thing that's being asked for isn't against the commandments or demeaning in some way, then what we really have to assume is that anytime somebody asks us something in our family, especially because God has given us our wife and our children, anytime somebody in our family asks us to do something, it's an invitation from God to grow in ways that we wouldn't grow if we were left to our own devices. So, God gave me my wife, not because he has a warped sense of humor, but because he knows that the needs he's placed on her heart give me a chance to grow in ways I need to grow to be the man he wants me to be. He gave me the kids that he gave me so that by listening to their needs and learning to attend to them in healthy, godly ways, I can grow in ways that I wouldn't if I didn't have these kids. And same is true the other way around. God gave me to my wife for the same reason. God gave me and my wife to our kids for the same reason, so that we could learn by growing together, attending to each other's needs. And so the first practice in this rite of reaching out is all about families serving each other at home. Because I do run into situations, especially with men, we like to go out and conquer things. We like to go out and be thought well of in our community. So we're always saying yes to everybody in the parish or in the community to be doing these good things to serve the kingdom. And then we're neglecting our own domestic church. Right. And that's the effect of, kind of going out to build the second floor of our house while letting our basement fall apart. The foundation of the house, if the foundation of the house is cracked and wearing away, what are we doing building the second floor of the house? And that's very much the domestic church is the foundation of the church and society. That is the church's teaching on matters. And so if we aren't living out this Christian service and discipleship in our home by really attending to each other's needs first, we are allowing the foundation of the church and society to fall apart on our watch. Now, let's just let that sink in. On the other hand, as Catholic men, as dads, living out our priesthood in our homes, celebrating this liturgy of domestic church life, we, by exemplifying this idea of Christian service, when our wife and our kids come to us with needs, we, instead of just saying, do I feel like doing it, saying, how can we figure out how to do this in a way that really works for all of us? That doesn't mean I have to say, I talk about this a lot too. It's not about just saying yes to everything all the time. It's about how we say it, right? It's the difference between negotiating the what versus the how and the when. So, what you want, I'm not going to call into question. What we are going to talk about is how and when, a plan by which we can identify the how and the when that we can meet the what. Because if we can do that, then we can be flexible enough for all of us to get our needs met. Me too. And still, find ways to be generous to each other. So one of the things that I really encourage you as a dad to do in families to encourage this kind of service within the home is to lead a discussion every day. It doesn't have to be a big one, just maybe 3 to 5 minutes, right? And ideally, you want to make it part of your family prayer time. So you have your prayer time together. You're asking God to help you be the family He wants you to be. You're raising the different concerns that you might have about your family to God. You're all talking together about ways that God's asking you to grow, and you're praying for the grace to do that. And at the end of your prayer time, and if you're not sure how to do that kind of prayer time, check out the podcasts in Catholic Home. The Catholic Home podcast on the praise format, praise. It's a simple format for family prayer that really kind of covers all these bases. But say you have that prayer time, and then at the end of it, like I said, you have a 3-minute discussion on, so let's talk about one thing each of us can do to try to make each other's day a little easier or more pleasant. What's something how can we show up for each other today? And you invite just everybody in the family to offer different things. Sometimes people won't have anything, and that's okay. But just that act of leading the discussion where you're saying, let's all talk about some ways we can show up for each other today. What are some simple ways we can make each other's day a little easier or more pleasant? What are some ways that we could serve each other and take better care of each other? And that gives everybody a chance to say, well, I'm really dealing with this today and I need that from everybody. Or, I'm really having a hard time with this and I could really use that. Or, hey, what if we took some time for this thing? Can we make that happen and these other things? And by remembering to negotiate the how and the when and not argue about the what, you're able to listen to all of that and begin as a family to develop that plan that enables you to meet all the needs. And by doing that, you're also living out another practice, a practice in the first rite of Christian relationship, which is the first part of the liturgy of domestic church life that teaches us how to love and cherish each other as Christ loves and cherishes us, which is the third practice in that rite, which is prompt, generous, consistent, and cheerful attention to each other's needs. And how these things go together, by the way, is the prompt, generous, consistent, and cheerful attention to each other's needs kind of orders the attitude that we have to have toward each other's needs, the idea that I want to hear your needs and I want to respond generously to those needs. The first practice in the third rite of Christian relationship, this idea of families serving generously at home, talks about the actions that we're going to take. How do we live out action plans related to that desire to attend to each other's needs? So by being a dad who's really living out this first practice and leading it in your home, you are exercising that common priesthood of consecrating your home to Christ by being that Christian witness of service in the home and encouraging every member of the family, your wife and your kids, to exercise a similar attitude toward Christian service. And that's how we become more like Christ. We serve each other as He served us. And by facilitating that process of service, you become that servant leader. Right? The servant leader of the home doesn't dictate the family agenda. The servant leader facilitates the process by which plans are made to serve each other and God more completely. In that sense, you're like the chairman of the board, who doesn't dictate the board's agenda. You facilitate the process by which the board makes good decisions for the company. And in the same way, being the leader of the home doesn't mean you dictate your will and impose it on everybody else. It's you are the person who is in the privileged position to facilitate the process by which godly decisions are made in your house. So you lead the prayer, you facilitate the conversation, you ask the questions that prompt these healthy discussions about prayer and godly service in the home. And your family, your wife and your children come to respect you and see you as that leader that doesn't impose your will and act like some kind of part-time pagan deity in the household, but who really who is the person who facilitates the communion and the sense of togetherness and service and real love and warmth that everyone enjoys. And that's where that respect comes from and that obedience comes from, because they see that you are working for their good. And in a similar way, that we sing in that childhood vacation Bible school song, "Oh, how I love Jesus because He first loved me," we model that. Our children love us and respect us and obey us because they see that we first loved them. By listening to their needs, by drawing those needs out, by facilitating plans by which we can work together as a family to meet those needs and encourage our kids to learn how to do that for us as well and each other as well, so that we can be a family that is truly committed to serving in each other and then be an icon of the Trinity. You've probably heard me talk about this before if you've listened to other podcasts on this, but St. Bonaventure said that the Trinity is like a 3-bucket water wheel that is each member of the Trinity is constantly pouring itself out for the benefit of the other two. But it never runs dry because the other 2 members of the Trinity are filling that bucket back up again. Well, family life is supposed to be that way. We are all supposed to be, parents and children, giving 100% to the good of the family as best that each of us can at our particular age and stage. And that's obviously going to differ based on what age and stage we're at. But each of us is giving what we can to work for the good of the others. And so even though we're all giving our best, none of us ever becomes resentful or runs dry because we feel just as taken care of as we're working hard to take care of others. Now, that's an ideal. And obviously our families, because we're all broken and sinful people, don't always live up to that. But that's the goal. And by cultivating these kind of simple practices that I've suggested in this podcast, we, as Catholic dads, can facilitate that process that allow our families to function like an icon of the Trinity, where each member is pouring itself out to work for the good of the others while never running dry or becoming resentful because each other is caring for us as well. Thanks so much for tuning in to the the Beatitudes podcast. If you've got questions about how to make this happen in your marriage or family life, I hope that you'll post them on the Catholic Home app in the Questions and Coaching Home Builders channel, where we'll have these discussions all the time and you can get the expert coaching that you need to make it work for your family. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.